This is not a biopic of Mr. Rogers. This was not your intent. It's been in development for many years, but what was it that attracted you when you came on board this film?
Well, we did. We realized really early on Mr. Rogers doesn't actually make a good protagonist of a narrative movie. He made a great lead of the documentary, which is beautiful, but he's too good. He's too far along in his his emotional evolution. So although he doesn't make a good protagonist of a movie, he does make a great antagonist, because the truth is Mr. Rogers in his lifetime had this ability to elicit really major change out of the people he came into contact with. He had this very challenging intimacy. He was so present with the people he came in contact with, and it wasn't like a passive niceness. I almost think like with Mr. Rogers, we tend to think, oh, he was so kind, he was so nice. It's true to some extent, but he also was incredibly challenging to the people around him and asked for a level of intimacy and a truth that most people don't require from the people that they come into contact with. And that meant that people who came into contact with him had these very personal experiences. And our character, Lloyd Vogel, who's based on Tom Junod, had that kind of experience where you're sort of not let off the hook.
Tom Junod, who wrote the Esquire article.
Yes, who Lloyd Vogel is based on, yeah.
Yeah, you know, you saw all the hands go up when I said, how many people watched Mr. Rogers?
Yeah.
You're playing with people's childhoods.
I know, that was the biggest, that was the biggest challenge. And I think the thing that we were both all the most nervous about was, if we didn't get it right, if we didn't get the essence of what this show was right, people would feel it in their bones. Even if they couldn't identify what was wrong, they would know something was off. And beyond that, we never wanted it to feel like we were making fun of the show or Mr. Rogers or what the show represented, because he's deceptively simple. The show was deceptively simple with a much deeper message underneath that was really radical. And that was very pure and had a real philosophy behind it. And it was based in child psychology, and it was based on Fred's just beautiful philosophy about how we can all be better people. So it was a big mission for all of us to be authentic about the program. We filmed on original tube cameras that the show was filmed on, these big, huge Ikegami.
In the actual studio.
In the actual studio of QED in Pittsburgh. We recreated the set perfectly based on their original blueprints from 1968 and sourced the fabric for the couches that had been discontinued. I mean, every detail had to be right. Every tie that Tom Hanks wears in the movie was a real tie we pulled out of Fred Rogers' closet because his wife let us come in and just have access.
Joanne Rogers. Now, Peter, Joanne, you had to earn her trust along the way, because this was written by Micah and by Noah several years ago. They'd been working on this. And so along the way, it wasn't always easy to get the Rogers estate and on board.
Peter is their favorite person. Oh, yeah.
Well, you're absolutely right, and rightly so. The people who worked with Fred and were part of his family and part of that community protect his legacy very closely. There have been so many attempts over the years to try to exploit the Fred Rogers legacy, and it's important to them that the integrity of his message is carried on. So when we first went to them, Bill Eisler, who was a character in the movie as well, he said, never going to happen. And it took 7-8 years of going back and earning their trust and spending time and learning more about Fred and learning more about that community. And it made the movie richer, and it brought the movie to the point where, I mean, we could have made it earlier, but we wouldn't have been making it with Mari Heller, and we wouldn't have been making it with Tom Hanks, and it wouldn't have come out at a moment when I think it has a message for everybody to hear right now.
Leah, you actually had gone to Tom Hanks before you were involved. He was your dream casting, is that right?
Always. He was almost the only casting. And he passed a number of times. And then Mari got involved, and she had this personal connection to him. And when we all met about who we should go to, she was like, well, you know, I was at this barbecue with him, and I could just email it to him. He's a huge fan of mine. And she did, and we couldn't believe, no, but he was. He was like a fan of Diary of a Teenage Girl. He was sort of courting Mari. He was waiting for the right moment for you to bring something to him. And she brought him this, I think, while he was in Greece, and he read it right away. And a week after we met with Mari about going to Tom Hanks, she called us and said he wants to do it.
You are a hero.
It's the biggest miracle I've ever performed. I'll never perform a
amazing.
miracle that good again. Well, the story goes years before I know Tom's son, Colin. We're friends, and our kids were all playing at a backyard birthday party, and I'm sitting there talking to Tom Hanks, and you're talking to Tom Hanks. And he was asking me, so what do you do? And I said, well, I'm a director. And he said, oh, there was just this article in the New York Times this weekend about women directors in Hollywood. Have you read it? And I was like, yeah, I'm in it. And he was like, oh, what did you direct? And I said, oh, I made this movie, Diary of a Teenage Girl. And he was like, I should watch it. And I was like, sure, Tom Hanks, you're going to go watch my movie. But because he's Tom Hanks and he's genuinely the most genuine person in Hollywood who does what he says, 5 days later, I got a personal email from him saying, I watched your movie and I loved it, and can we have a meeting? Not like from an assistant, like from Tom Hanks. It went to my junk mail. It was like... And so we met and had a really nice general meeting, and we didn't have any projects at the time we knew we wanted to do together, but we kind of kept in touch over the years while I made Can You Ever Forgive Me? So yeah, when these guys came to me and said, we've always dreamed of Tom Hanks, he's passed 3 times, or I don't know if the number is getting inflated now. He's passed 45 times.
74 times.
It sounds good.